Shall we call the meeting to order? Take a roll call vote? All right.
Thank you very much. All right. The meeting's been called to order according to the chair, so we'll get started. Dr. Ash El Sayed,
Here.
Blair Parker,
Here.
Frank Wagster,
Here.
Alton Heathcote,
I'm tickled to death to be in front of my esteemed colleagues today.
esteemed colleagues. All right, Jason Carter, James Collins, Rick Thompson,
Here.
Brian Tibbs, Melanie Doss,
Present.
Robert Campbell,
Here.
Rob Barrick, Jeff Nally. All right, thank you so much. As you can see, we have our West Tennessee members snug at home, and that's good because we don't want you on the road. So glad you're able to join us nonetheless, and look forward to your participation as well. All right. We do have a quorum, Chair, so I believe we're able to proceed. Announcements. If we may, I'd like a couple introductions. We have two new members which have joined us here today. We've got Mr. Collins, who is our associate engineer from West Tennessee. And we also have our public member, Jeff Nally, as well. So we have a full board. All right. And then also we have a new staff member, Tammy Rorick, right here. She's coming to us from Department of Health, a little over 22 years there and a little over 25 years with the state. So she'll be handling our architect application. So Rick and Frank and let's see who else we got there. Brian, if he was here, you'll be dealing and having the pleasure of interacting with Tammy in the days ahead. All right.
How does she draw short straw?
That's what she said. All right. Well, looks like we're ready for the agenda then. Any edits or comments as regards to the agenda? Also, just to keep in mind as well, anyone attending virtually, they're already aware, but just to the present, those that are physically in attendance, we want all of our board members to include those participating virtually to be in those discussions, to make comments, ask questions, all those type of things. But they won't be able to vote on action items unless there's been an executive order or there's been a statement of necessity. So they won't be able to vote, just be those, that'll be limited to those present. But nonetheless, though, they'll be fully active in the rest of our business, save that piece.
I'm going to ask her, I mean, I 1,000% understand where you're coming from. What is that process that potentially people could be, if there is something like this that happens from time to time? I'm not trying to open a can of worms. I just want to know, does it have to start is it a law change, or is it something we as a board could enact, or how does that work?
Statement of necessity, that handles to the Secretary of State's office. So it's a general procedural rule, and it can also, there is some discretion with administration as well. So there's nothing that the board would have to do in that regard. Just currently right now, it's limited under that decision was based on executive orders or a statement of necessity. But and the whole purpose of the statement of necessity is so we wouldn't be hamstringed if we needed to do business, if there was something that popped up or whatever else. But if it's something, perhaps even whether if we were shy of quorum, that might drive the statement of necessity for consideration, something to that effect. But there's a myriad of scenarios that we could pull out a statement of necessity if we needed to.
I mean, and again, not to run down a rabbit hole, but I think the way our state is, right, I mean, you got really three parts of the state and different things happen, whether it's weather or something else. And I'd hate to have everybody gather together and us not have a quorum because we have a situation like an ice storm in West Tennessee, or that same thing could happen in East Tennessee. So,
well, and that's why I will say, too, just as a matter of housekeeping, I really appreciate everyone's responsiveness. Everyone on this board has been really great about, staying in touch, and we always have great participation levels as well. Had it not been for the weather, we'd have an entire, 12-member board present today. So that's impressive for a board this size to have that sort of level of participation. So I don't get a lot of heartburn because I can typically do the head count and track that. And then if we run into some danger, then, we can make those decisions preemptively. I will say Mr. Nally really helped us out getting that pushed through as well. And then Laura did the hustle on the orientation, and I mean, we had orientation just a few days ago, and like, we'll see you on Thursday. So that worked out great, and we appreciate that we got quorum done. But all right, very well. To the agenda then, if there's we'll just need an approval on the agenda or edits.
Second is published.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
Now, and since we've only got 5 present folks to vote, you guys are going to be, we're going to be doing the heavy lifting today. So anyway, we'll be looking to you. All right, December minutes.
I've reviewed the minutes. They appear to be in order, so I make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional comments regarding the minutes? If not, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes carry. The ayes have it. The motion carries.
Right, great. Thank you, Chair. I think we're ready for that next piece then, professional society reports. I think we have Casey. We'll start with Casey.
Good morning. I'm Casey Anderson, representing the American Society. Where do I work? I'm Casey Anderson. I'm the executive director of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee, and representing the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers. I'm assuming Nathan Ridley, I see his name on there, so maybe I don't. He will probably give you a glorious update on the state of affairs across the street. But the legislature is back, and that is where Nathan and I at least are spending the majority of our time these days. And bill filing deadline for the House was Tuesday afternoon, so we're up to, 1,500, 1,600 bills that have been filed, so we've been making our way through those. And there will be lots to share about that down the road, but it's a little early for that for y'all. So I thought I'd give you an update on what has been happening with us. ACEC had a senior principals forum the 5th of January. We had about 150 senior leaders from engineering firms across the state. Very pleased. We had a little mental health component. We had some information from our research institute, and then we had the speaker lineup that was unparalleled in our past history. That included the governor, Commissioner Ely from TDOT, Commissioner Bryson from FNA, Commissioner Salyers from TDEC. It was just a boom boom full of great information about what's happening in our state. So we're very grateful to all of those state leaders who were able to come and share.
Casey, while we're on the record, I want to personally commend you for your ability to get that assembled. That was an incredible lineup of speakers. The best I think this is the 6th or 7th year that we've done this, and I when you sent out the agenda and I saw the list, I thought there is no way all those people are going to show up for this, but you got every one of them not only there but to give a meaningful presentation. You did a fantastic job.
Thanks, Alton. I appreciate that. We are really excited to be. We're very, very supportive of the Governor's initiative for the Transportation Modernization Act of 2023, and so there was a lot of conversation around that and some other things. So I appreciate that. We are working toward finalizing a date that we should have in the next, hopefully, 24 hours for there's Mr. Ridley, for the ACC TDOT Partnering Conference that we'll be doing again in the spring. Really excited about that. We've got folks geared up all across the state working on E-Week activities. E-Week, for those of you who are new, is the week that the nation celebrates engineering. E-Week is short for engineers or Engineering Week. So there'll be STEM activities. There'll be some banquets and things where we focus on what's been happening in the world. A lot of classroom visits, a lot of shadow opportunities all across the state. Everyone sort of manages that a little bit differently, but it's a fun week to celebrate engineers and engineering. We've got math counts competitions, the local ones happening all over the state, and then the next month, the I guess this month now, the state competition will be here. So that's always exciting. We send the top winners from that onto a national competition. So that's fun to see those mathletes, which is actually a real term, compete. Leadership PE is our ACEC's leadership program. It's 2/3 consultants, 1/3 people from the public sector, who include TDOT, TDEC, TVA, and Corps of Engineers. That will start on or about March 1st. Those applications, since I know we've got some folks who watch this online, those applications are due tomorrow. Our scholarships, both ACEC and the Tennessee Engineering Foundation, give scholarships to college juniors and seniors, and for the ACEC scholarships anyway, also first-year graduate students. Those applications are due tomorrow. We've talked about the state-level Engineering Excellence Awards that were last November. We are really excited to have 7 of our projects from Tennessee entered into the national competition this year. So that's going to be fun. And there's some that I think are really poised to do really well up there, that are innovative and different from what we see every day up there. So that'll be exciting. Engineers Day on the Hill will be February the 28th. And then Ashley, I'm assuming, is making a report. She will probably mention this as well, but we do a joint legislative reception that you all are all invited to. That will, it's ACEC, AIA, ABC, and AGC, which is the construction side of the AEC world. That will be on March the 7th, but I'll let Ashley do the update on that. If there are no questions, that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Since we have an introduction to Ashley, that seems like the perfect segue. Ashley, would you mind?
Good morning. Yes, Casey, that was great. Now I have to follow you. So my name is Ashley Cates. I'm the Executive Vice President of AIA Tennessee. I'm sorry I couldn't be there this morning. My children are running 2 hours late for school, so I'm in the process of that. But just a quick update. We have, since we've met, we've had a planning retreat with our state board to look at the goals for 2023. Several of those goals, including creating a new public outreach committee for members across the state to discuss and determine the scope of discussing the value of architecture, and as well as building the pipeline for the future generations to go into the profession. So we're excited about that new committee. We also have our government relations committee that meets weekly every Friday morning to review the legislation, as Casey said. We'll have a better idea in the next week or so. We've been coming through the bills to see what would impact the profession, and those calls will be kicked up and going throughout the next coming months through legislative session. That being said, we have rolled out our advocacy series that it goes out today to our membership. To those of you that have our email. We have an online Speak Up series talking about advocacy and alternative ways when you can advocate, not just having to pick up the phone or go and meet with a state legislator, but other ways that you can advocate that doesn't take a lot of time. So reaching out to our younger members, trying to get them engaged and informed of the importance of advocacy at all levels of the profession. That will be held on February 28th and on March 3rd. And then that's online. And then, of course, Casey was talking, we do our Day on the Hill on March 7th. And we're having the joint legislative reception. It's going to be held, Hastings Architecture has a community room similar to some other organizations in the, I guess, like Waller Lanston, they have a community room where receptions are being held. And so Hastings Architecture is located at 225 Polk Avenue. It was the former Nashville Library. It's won several awards, national awards on the preservation and the adaptive reuse of a building. And so we're excited to have the reception there held with ACEC, AGC Tennessee, AGC East Tennessee, and ABC Tennessee. So it's the design and construction industries in the state coming together. In addition, after that, we will roll in the emerging professionals are kicking off. They are creating a statewide study group online. We have study groups that are located in each kind of central area of the state based on our local components, but we are kicking off an online study group that happens on Friday afternoons and some Saturday mornings. But it's to create an opportunity where some of those members that can't make actual live sessions and meetups can have a group across the state to come together and study together. Additionally, I want to thank the staff for pulling information for us. We are going to acknowledge our newly licensed architects at the summer conference in Memphis that will be held August 2nd through the 3rd. More information will come about that as well. And then we're also gearing up to work with TenSave, an organization that it was formed, has architects and engineers as part of that organization, to get our architect members involved in the disaster preparedness and get them trained and create awareness around that. So that's kind of what's out there for the first quarter report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate that. Mr. Ridley is making his way to the podium, I can see now. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it. Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Nathan Ridley. I'm here on behalf of the Tennessee chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. You might have thought that all of us in the professional societies were a little not brain dead, so not word, but yesterday and today, all this week's been the filing deadline for legislation for our friends in the Tennessee General Assembly. So we went from about 300 bills a week or so ago, and now we have about 1,500. So they've been very busy in the sessions just getting underway. They started on January the 10th. They'll probably go through early May, just like I'm sure your staff is doing. We're sort of browsing through the bills too to see the threats and opportunities. Our conference is in Memphis on the 20th and the 21st. With my construction hat on, I also participate in the Associated Builders and Contractors and would again encourage you to participate in that March 7th event. It's kind of fun. It's a big gathering, a lot of design professionals, a lot of construction folks, all in one spot. I think that might be, it's nice to go last. I think that might be the news from Wake Beauregard today. So thanks for your patience. I'm happy to respond to your questions. Thank y'all.
Thank you. That was a record short report, especially this time of the year. Yeah.
I dare say April's going to be a little bit more beefy. Yeah,
I bet.
Thank you, professional society reps. We appreciate your time and your report. The director's report. I guess I'm up then. Okay. Let me get to my screen. All right. Start with the budget here. If you'll indulge me, I'll spend a little bit more time on the budget for really two reasons. One, we always want to go over the reserves and touch on that at that first meeting of the year, but also for our new members as well to sort of dig into it a little bit. So I'll probably recap a couple high points that we already touched on last meeting, but just want them to understand kind of what's in that budget report. So we have two things to look at. We've got the trending for our fiscal year. We're in fiscal year 23. That starts in June, actually, the last year. And then we have our reserves year end over year for the last 4 years. So that kind of gives us a macro picture and then a micro picture. At our last meeting in December, we had reporting through October. Unfortunately, we only have one more month, so there's not a whole lot of extra reporting on this, on the trending report at least. I want to cover just a couple items that just as a recap from our last meeting, but wanted to carry forward in this meeting for our new members. If you look under, of course, it's basically what you're looking at is a P&L sheet. You've got revenue on top and then our expenses down below. And then the those being reconciled with either a deficit or a surplus at the very bottom. And then you have revenue and expenditures down just below that, year end over year end, so you can sort of see if there's any anomalies there. But if you look under other and Edison expenses, and if you're wondering what Edison is, for our new members, welcome to it. You're in it now. You are in Edison. Anytime you've did these expense reports or that's a part of Edison. So if you hear our folks throwing that around, that's what they're talking about. It's basically our clearinghouse for expenditures and time and all the payroll kind of stuff we have to do. If you look at August and September at a large allocation, then a reallocation to fix that error, resulting in a deficit for August and a large surplus for the following month of September. So anytime you see a back-to-back, like all of a sudden a spike in one account and then all of a sudden a huge dip the next, it's pretty much an adjustment. You know, accountants, when they put stuff in the wrong place, and you'll also see that in the reserves as well. The administrative cost backs will go in different accounts. We have a 725 account in reserves, and now couple years later they put that into another, or they itemize that under cost back. So that's usually where that movement is. You know, so. But anyway, that was due to a grants expense initially being placed under the wrong budget line item, then corrected. I did see an increase for technology expenses in August. We talked about that last meeting, but that's us upgrading to the cloud and some IT-related support expenses there, which is a good thing too. Just so you know, the contract for our system, our database, is up this year. So we're in the process of negotiating a new contract, maybe with them or with another vendor. There could be some expenses down the pike as a result of that. We have yet to see that since it's too early in those negotiations to make any determinations. But now you understand why the urgency to get us on cloud. You know, so now that we're there and everything's trucking, we've got a safe place where that'll help us in the negotiating from a place of strength there. For the same September line item, other under administrative cost back, September was a catch-up month for billing. That's the normal practice with accounting, because when you close a period in June, it's so hectic they catch up in September. You know, typically the end of a fiscal year in June to June, you're not able to clear all the accounts that trickle in later. Well, then you just reconcile that in September. That's their time to do that. They're paying a lot of other things and trying to clear those as well, contracts and making all that fit neatly. And our fiscal year doesn't always work, so that happens in September. So that's why you'll see that there. So you're getting all of our administrative expenses loaded up in September. Let's.
One quick question, just for clarification. Mm-hmm. The state regulatory or state reg fee, which is a deduction every year or every month on the revenues, where are we paying that?
Oh, that goes to, it's a F&A. They print it, data services. When I first asked our accountant, this was years ago, we pay $5 per license that we print. So that's what that is. And I always thought, well, why? I asked him, I said, what is that? Why is it in the revenue column, of all places, and not in expenses? He says, well, that's a reduction in revenue. And I was like, yes, which would be an expense.
Yeah, it would make sense every
right.
month. If it's a reduction,
right?
It should be in the expense.
It's an accounting term, so I was like, I think what they want to do is track what we're actually paying, to another department division, since it's all interdepartmental. I'm not, so I
as
think
a negative revenue.
Yeah, I don't get it either, but okay. That was above my pay grade. So I look for the anomalies and then make much of those when I see them. But for that was, and it's typical across our other programs as well. So you'll see that if you were to look at some of the others.
Campbell,
remind me again, but I think I know the answer. Roughly, our expenses are about $1 million-ish a year. Something, so our reserve needs to be about $2 million, $2.5 million, somewhere in that range. Can we get the finance? And you sent that out, the fees and stuff. But we're right now, if we track that, we're at least $1 million over what our necessary reserve is. And I know we're going to probably talk about grants increasing and other things. But you'd sent out the fees. We probably need to get the finance committee together or whatever to see if there's some opportunities and try to do that more formally, because $1.5 million is a big number to be over what your 2-year reserve is. If you don't mind, maybe next meeting or something, let's try that.
Yeah, we're knocking at about. I looked at probably right at not quite a million, but right at 800,000 surplus. For that target. The only thing I would say about that is I would like to see with the core contract expiring soon. I would like to see that once we get into that a little bit more, because that's sort of that we can spend a lot of money, right there alone. For example, I think it was court reporters, just bringing them onto core, and they have like maybe 400 licensees, not a lot, and that costs like $80,000, $90,000. So you can imagine with engineers and stuff looking at 20,000, right at 20,000, it could be a significant expense. So there are some things we want. Plus, we had a total compensation package that's rolled out too. We don't have any trending or data from that yet, and we're also looking at the enrollment rates. What was it? Department of Education, THEC. They reported that the enrollment rates, not just in engineering, but a lot of just across the board, have been plummeting, and so that's going to trickle into. We'll see, but obviously, if you require a degree to get licensure in a professional industry like you would here, then it would have a trickle effect as well. So there is some data points that I'd like to see before we get together and have, I want to make sure we have something to talk about and we have some of those indicators. I think it's great. The administration's always supportive if there's an opportunity for fee deductions and the rest. So I really appreciate the board's earnestness and to be evaluating, thinking about those things. I think that's very responsible, and I know the administration would absolutely agree. But I would like some more of those data points, so we'd have a little bit more to discuss.
How long do you think it would be before you have those data points?
Well, the contract negotiations will probably be several months, and then you're going to look at several months after that. So it'd be later into the year before we'd have a little bit more. What was the other point? Yeah, and I think with the total compensation package as well, we'll see that in the payroll, the Edison columns there as well. So I'd like to see what that looks like, and how that's going to affect us. But that's I think I'm glad that we're exploring and thinking about those things. I think that's a good posture to be in.
Chairman, I appreciate that. What is CORE exactly, and does it take the place of anything that we're doing? I mean, I'm just out of the loop.
Oh yeah, CORE, Comprehensive Online Regulatory Enforcement System or something like that. But CORE, it's our platform for licensing. That's basically our clearinghouse for everything we do. Whether it's a complaints filed there, our licensing is there. It's basically our big file cabinet. When we're reaching in to pull out a file, we're pulling it out of the cloud and out of CORE. That's our system.
Wouldn't some of that take the place of one maybe other things that we've got here, or is it just isn't an additional?
It would be an extension of that, because we don't want, obviously there is some functionality we like. We want to get we want a good return on investment, so we want, if there's some enhancements that we can get on the front end, that's the time to be doing that. And we've had this system for a while now, so a lot of lessons learned, a list of things that we want, requirements going forward as well. But it should support that and enhance that. I hope we don't. I mean, because that system was it's basically an internet-based, almost DOS system, really. So technology is just rapidly changing and growing, and if it can give us some more functionality to really interface more and well, stronger with our public and our customers, that would be useful. So there's a lot going into that right now, and a lot of those expenses initially are expensive too. You move into a new house and you got hookup charges and stuff. You don't just have your service fees, but you got all of those initial charges as well. So we want to look at that and see what that's going to do to all of our boards across. Questions? Stretching me today. Any other questions on the budget, or at least the trending? We'll go to, if the board will allow, we'll go to the reserves then. And to your point, Robert, we're sitting, if you go to the very bottom, we're sitting at 3.1, roughly. Yeah, about 3.1 million right now. And the goal is about 2 years, as Robert pointed out to our new members. The goal is about 2 years worth of expenditures, operating expenses. So, and that will certainly increase as well with total compensation package. But there's two things you want to look at. You want to look at total expenditures, right there near kind of about 3/4 of the way down, and then you've got net revenue, and then those reconciled, giving you your balance, and then carried over your overall reserve balance as well. And then you get a picture of some of those accounts. To the left under payroll expenditures, you'll see travel. And if you're wondering what state professional services is, that right there is data services. So IT support comes out of that. Rent comes out of that. So that's a big bucket. That's our shared rent across or allocated to us. And as far as administrative cost backs, that's basically a pro rata according to size of program and complaints. I mean, obviously, 20,000 licensees with our number of complaints, we're going to pay a little bit more than the court reporters will because they've only got 400, but we're not going to pay maybe as much as, contractors or even Cosmo and Barber, who has 60,000 plus, or maybe even 70 by now, licensees. So that's what that's coming out of. That's our shared expenses. There. Any questions just off the cuff?
Questions? Thank you.
Sir, thank you. All right. I wish that Stephen King was still with us, because I had a quick newsletter update as a part of the, and so in his honor, there's a request for information that went out recently to the associations and others. Basically, it's a solicitation for estimates based on parameter set. I do think, and I'm looking at some of the interdepartmental newsletters as well, electronic newsletters. I want to see first what we get on return, just a big estimate of what that would cost on what we have historically in the past, and then if it's outrageous, then I want to look at maybe some other more abbreviated newsletters and then see where we land on that. But just letting you know the process has started. We're at least putting the feelers out. So I just wanted to give you a quick update. Nothing formative right now to discuss, but when we get those numbers back, and I'm tracking it, just wanted you to be aware of that. I think that's it. I think we're ready for, let's take a look. I think we're ready for Mr. Bersai. We sent him packing to Greenville just recently as a part of the committee, a committee meeting that he was participating in, the MBA committee specifically. Christened him as a emeritus member and then sent him on, put him straight to work. So let's see, Mr. Bersai, if you would like to give us that update. And you all have his notes as well on your iPads.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Happy to be with you this morning, all of you, even if it's virtually. And I did attend an NCEES meeting in January, the MBA committee meeting. MBA is a member board administrators, what the NCEES calls executive directors. So it's all of Glenn's counterparts for the other boards. This is a committee that is a smaller committee that looks at issues and then presents things to the whole of the MBAs. And I am on it because by the bylaws, they have to have a board member on this committee. I don't know if that's to keep the MBA straight or what, I don't know, but there often are topics that come up where they want input from a board member. So that's has been my role on the committee. To open the meeting, David Cox, who is the executive director of NCEES, came in to welcome us, but he made it a point he wanted to tell us kind of alert us to this federal law that has been passed or legislation moving through that would grant universal licensure to military personnel and spouses. And the reason he thought it was significant to bring that up was that in his time anyway, he thought that was the first time really the federal government was coming in and getting involved with the state licensing regulations and laws. And he wonders if that's going to be challenged because up till now it's been left up to the states, or whether that's just a thing that will be coming in the future. But he felt it was significant to mention that to us. Then we moved on to the agenda items, and by far we spent the most time talking about continuing education. They call it CPD. Really about how the states, the different boards have different continuing education requirements, and the goal I think NCEES is pushing is to make those as alike as possible. And Tennessee has done some of that recently with a couple of tweaks. They mentioned specifically, talked about the home state rule, which Tennessee has the home state rule, which is if you are a comedy registrant and if you're audited, you can either provide the records of your continuing education, or you can say that you meet your home state's continuing education requirements and do it that way. They mentioned a couple of problems or complications with the home state rule to make a case that it could get complicated. For instance, California and Nevada don't require continuing education at all. So if we have registrants from California and Nevada, can they say they meet the home state rule and not have any continuing education? I don't know if we've ever dealt with that on a staff basis, but anyway, the suggestion was made that instead of a home state rule, you could say you could submit your information or state that you meet the NCEES standard, which is roughly, it's 15 hours a year. Tennessee right now is 12 hours a year. So a lot of this conversation doesn't necessarily apply. It's usually not a problem for out-of-state people to meet Tennessee's requirements. But anyway, that was quite a lengthy conversation about all of that. We talked about, it was mentioned briefly about the military exceptions and how if we have a rule about that, using the word deployed is probably more to the spirit than active duty. Active duty includes, it was felt by the MBAs, it includes people who really should be able to do continuing education, as opposed to deployed. It's understandable if you can't do that if you're deployed overseas somewhere. With the goal being to have the states look at where they're different and see if they can become more uniform on continuing education. The MBA committee is going to construct a spreadsheet of all the states, and not only for continuing education, but for some other topics that have to do with handling applications, both for comedy and initial applications, so that it'll really be a source of information for each board's MBA to know where are we different on an issue that we don't have to be, or are we definitely in the majority, and so it probably will be a useful tool. So that will be worked on in the coming months and given to each MBA. There was brought up during this conversation that one of the MBAs, or a couple of them, said that it's for comedy applicants. It's they made a case to not require references because the initial references were with their initial license, and a lot of times 25 years later, it's hard to find people who knew you or know you when you did engineering work, or you might be into more administrative rules. So there was a argument there to not require references. I will say I kind of find references, getting new references is useful. People can change, their mental ability can change. You can. I think it's good to get an idea whether someone continues to be capable, and for the public safety benefit. But anyway, that's my editorial there. Other than that, the one thing I did not put in my notes, because we kind of dropped it from the agenda there, NCEES has a white paper that's been written about member immunity from liability, that for member boards, and it kind of stems out of the North Carolina dental case, but it doesn't get back into that. It goes beyond that, and our charge was to review that and see if that was still needed, but it was decided that we did not need to review that because the NCEES committee that developed that white paper felt like there were needed revisions, and so that will probably come back around to us. But it's interesting topic in terms of the member immunity, and I think Tennessee has a lot of things going forward with the oversight we have from our Department of Commerce and Insurance that protects us quite a bit. That is the end of my report. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions if anybody has questions.
Thank you, Ricky. I have a question about item 1. When it says
yes,
federal law has been passed through, grants universal licensure to military personnel and spouses, what qualifications do they need to have before they are issued licensure? No qualifications?
I think that it's if somebody has an initial license, it's whatever qualifications that initial state had, and then it's the other member boards will be obligated per this law to grant comedy. So it depends on where their initial license is from.
Okay.
So there are some licenses where you don't need to be a graduate engineer, which Tennessee does not. You do have to be a graduate engineer in Tennessee, and so there may be some applicants that we would normally turn down that we would not be able to if they were met the conditions of this federal law.
Ricky?
Yeah.
Ricky, this is Blair. Interesting with regard to the military requirements of what are opportunities I hear in Tennessee. I've had an email conversation with both Stuart and Glenn about this, because this is a hot topic, or at least a topic with CLARB, which, for those of you who don't know, the Council of Landscape Architecture Registration Boards. And so I asked the question, how do we in Tennessee handle this? Because initially I couldn't find it, but the long and short of it is, and Stuart and Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I found it interesting, and I was thinking more in terms of spouses. So anyway, so someone's licensed in a different state, they come to Tennessee, and they want to become licensed. We in Tennessee will help them get licensed, and we basically streamline the process, but they still have to meet our requirements. The interesting thing about in Tennessee now, because if there are any extenuating circumstances, then that goes back to the board, or I'm assuming the committee, the engineering, LA, whatever committee, and then the board takes action on that. But in Tennessee, we basically say, hey, we will help you get licensed here so you can continue to earn your living while you're here, and we will expedite the process where possible, basically. But we don't make any special provisions otherwise, I do not believe.
I think what's different with this, Blair, is my understanding on universal licensure is if the applicant for comedy is licensed in another state, then the state where they're applying for comedy is obligated to grant them comedy, as opposed to reviewing an application.
I see. Okay. Well, now, Stuart and Glenn, as you read the rule, it doesn't really matter. But this is all interesting discussion, so thank you for this.
Yeah, I'll let Stuart pile on if he wants to, or correct me. But typically, how it works is you both are correct. What happens is, and I'll show you where the break is, or where the bridge is rather. We basically, if a military applicant was to move to Clarksville, and they have a license somewhere else, then we grant them basically, in essence, it's a temporary practice permit to the lesser of a year, or when their license, wherever they're coming from, expires. And that gives them, so that way they can continue to practice, but they have to make application and meet our standards here. And so, whereas from what I'm hearing from you, Ricky, is that they're saying that there won't even be an application. It'll just be universal. It seems like to me reciprocity is what it sounds like.
That's my understanding.
I think there will be an application, but the application is basically just a paperwork. You're here, give me my license application, which is, and not to get political or anything, but I mean, it's a state right versus federal rights potential issue too that I would hope we would, along with other states, push back on, because there are certain places and certain things about states that are unique from other states, and that's why we have certain things that we value as more important or less important than other states. And the one that creates the most issue is generally a state like California, Alaska, Florida, that have unique things that they look at, and it just seems like that's not a great. We want to help the military because I understand that sometimes they're more transient, and I think we've done a good job of making that expedient and trying our best to get them on board. And I want to keep obviously doing that, but just the next step is just carte blanche, just whatever, and that becomes a very, very dangerous predicament for all of us to be in.
Robert, you're right. In terms of the federal versus state, that was the exact reason David brought that up, and there was that discussion about how there are. It's an argument against universal licensing, where there are different states have specific knowledge needed to do design. Like, in West Tennessee, we have our structural engineers have to be structural engineers, and other engineers have to understand the earthquake codes for the zone that we're in. That somebody coming from out of state may have never done any seismic design. That would just an example.
Hey, Ricky, one other question. It appears that David may be concerned also that this could be a gateway law that may allow the federal government not only to make a direct pathway for military personnel, but other personnel as well, or other individuals as well?
I did get that feeling, Alton, that he saw it as an entree to federal control over a registration process, and that the words he said left the expectation that he believes that the states will challenge this.
That was a great point. I'm glad you said that, Alton, because it does extend to spouses, ours as well. And Tennessee was already leading the charge on that, was front forward. And we've been expediting those applications and granting that sort of temporary practice for a couple of years now, 2 or 3 years. So, and they're just now it sounds like to me the federal government's just now having a conversation about that. They want to go to more of a universal route, but nonetheless, we're already, we've already got a structure in place.
This is Frank. I've got one question, Ricky. On the universal license, let's say I'm in the military in the state of Tennessee. Does that mean, even though I live here and I'm licensed here, that if I want to get a license in California and Illinois, they have to grant the license, even though I don't reside there?
That's a good, or you're not stationed there on a base, Frank. Maybe
right.
Might be the. I don't know. I don't. He didn't have the bill or the law, the wording in front of us, so I don't know if there are those conditions in there. That's a good question.
Yeah, universal seems all encompassing.
Yeah, definitely is. There are a couple of states who have their legislation have passed universal licensure, and that in that case, that's what it means. I'm not sure about this military bill.
Hey, Ricky, another concern
Glenn,
I think would be
that
the legislation that other states have passed related to engineering technology degrees. There are a number of states that consider an engineering technology degree equivalent to an engineering degree, and they'll grant licensure to somebody with an ET diploma. That doesn't rise to the level of professional development that we have in Tennessee. Would this universal law apply to that as well?
I mean, that would be the case, and that was the sentiment expressed is universal licensure is really granting acceptance to the lowest common denominator requirements. So your standards that you have to accept whatever any of the other states have, and some of those are very different.
And I believe there was even one state that for some that you didn't have to have an engineering license. It was, I think when we did our tour through the thing, it was an experience or something. So, I mean, you literally have potential. And again, we're probably dealing with things that are out there, but we need to be aware of the ramifications. That you just go to the state that you can most easily get licensed that would meet almost no standard that Tennessee has or the majority of states have. And get licensed. So, that's certainly a problem. Could be a problem.
Correct. That's right, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me. You've been very patient and kindness.
Well, it is an engineering report.
But you've had the power all along to shut this conversation down. I appreciate you letting us talk. And
My pleasure to accommodate my fellow professionals on this dais. So.
Jason, if you can, have Rob smile every once in a while during the meeting. I've not seen him smile yet.
I'm getting misty from all the camaraderie here. It's
yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, Ricky. I appreciate you. That was and I appreciate the continuity. And that was the importance of that decision that the board made as well to allow Burnside or Ricky here to become emeritus and to continue his work on that committee. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate that.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
I think we're ready for the legal report then.
Okay, number one is 2022-049-351. The respondent self-reported his license elapsed in July of 2021. However, they have not stamped any plans while the license was expired, so the respondent has since renewed the license. This was reviewed by Robert Campbell. There were no plans stamped while the license expired, and so the recommendation is to send a letter of caution and pass the laws and rules exam.
Got a recommendation? Need a motion? Motion to accept. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Signify your approval by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you.
Number two is 2022-050-881. The respondent submitted plans with contact information and a Colorado stamp on a Tennessee project. Respondent is not licensed in Tennessee. Respondent immediately removed their contact information and stamp when requested. Respondent also stated the client will seek a Tennessee licensed landscape architect to submit the plans and work on the project. This was reviewed by Blair Parker. The mitigating factors is they immediately removed the contact information and stamp. The aggravating factors, of course, is unlicensed activity. And the recommendation is to authorize a $500 penalty for unlicensed activity.
A recommendation to authorize a $500 penalty for unlicensed activity. Do we have a motion to support that?
Motion to approve.
A motion, have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
Number three is 2022-052-121. Complainant alleges respondent submitted a traffic report by email to the city and several county commissioners. The report contains calculations for vertical curves, stopping distance, and intersection sight distance triangles. The city claims respondent is not licensed. Respondent explains that the Planning Commission was considering a high-density zoning change, and concerned residents, including respondent, completed measurements of a dangerous intersection in opposition of the change. None of the residents are engineers, nor did they involve an engineer in their measurements and report. The residents used information from the internet to make the calculations and drawings. After review, there is nothing to show that respondent implied or construed to being an engineer or performed engineering services to the public. These drawings were developed by concerned neighbors and used in opposition of a zoning change hearing. Reviewed by Board Member Jason Carter, mitigating factors are no violations were found. The recommendation is to close.
We have a recommendation to close. Can we get a motion to that effect?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the recommendation to close signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries.
Number four, 2022-051-031. Complainant is the president of HOA involved with a property owner that began work on their lot by covering and extending an operational culvert without written permission. The HOA gave the owner the choice of either returning the culvert to its original condition or have an engineer do it. Respondent complete a report showing that the buried work done would not hinder the flow of drainage water. Complainant alleges respondent provided an unethical report with a mixture of engineering opinion, legal interpretations of the HOA covenants, and a suggestion to sue the HOA for emotional distress. The lot owners eventually agreed to return the culvert to its original condition. Respondent states that he was contacted and hired by the lot owners to investigate a culvert installed on their property. Lot owners explained to respondent that culvert had been installed about a year ago and was verbally permitted by a former HOA member. Respondent gathered more information about the property and went to investigate. Given the circumstances and the drop inlet being secured with specialty screws, a survey could not be conducted and only a visual inspection was the only option. Respondent found that the culvert is not functioning properly due to the inlet being raised above grade, water was visible at the base of the inlet, and the outlet was full of dust, leaves, and other debris, suggesting improper water flow. The HOA forced the lot owner to, quote, define a viable way for the existing culvert to once again perform its intended function without its flow being hindered or blocked in any manner, end quote. Respondent prepared a report but felt was absurd for the lot owner to hire an engineer when it was obvious that the culvert was not functioning and incurred the expense. The HOA sent a disparaging email to the lot owner stating they did not follow the covenant procedures and threatened legal action. Respondent believed the lot owners did follow procedures and should not have been put through this, and that the HOA's actions are punitive in nature. Respondent believes the HOA has a personal issue with him and did not hire another engineer to dispute his findings. This was reviewed by board member Rob Barrick. There were no violations found, and recommendation is to close.
I have a recommendation to close this complaint by Mr. Barrick. Do we have a motion to do so? Motion, how about a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Ayes carry. Ayes have it, the motion carries.
All right, number 5, 2023-001-381. Respondent self-reported that he performed work while his license was expired. Respondent provided evidence of 6 projects being stamped during the expiration period. Respondent has since renewed his license. This was reviewed by board member Alton Heathcote. Mitigating factors are self-reported. Aggravating factors is practicing on expired license. Recommendation is authorize a $3,000 penalty for stamping plans on 6 projects while license was expired and take the laws and rules exam.
We have a recommendation to authorize the $3,000 penalty for stamping plans on 6 projects while license was expired and take the laws and rules exam, and we might add and pass the laws and rules exam. So we do have a recommendation on the floor. Can we get a motion to accept?
Civil penalty rules say $500 to $1,000.
Motion, thank you. Second, any further discussion? Other than that, to take the laws and rules exams and pass the laws and rules exam.
I think that's
Glenn would
implied,
always
but
say.
okay.
Yeah, so, okay. Thank you. I believe that concludes the legal. No?
Yeah, one more there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gotta vote
Oh,
on
we
one.
didn't vote. I'm sorry, my apologies. All in favor of the motion, signify by aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining from voting.
Okay, we have 1 abstention. So the motion on the floor carries, or give a,
There is one other.
oh, we have two abstentions? No? Okay. So we have the vote to carry. Okay. All right. So the vote, the ayes carried, and so the motion is approved.
Have one more representation.
We do. Thankfully, because of our public member, that gives us 5. So, Mr. Nally came through again. All right. Thanks.
It almost makes you feel like they swore you in just to make sure they got your vote, right?
He's abstaining from that.
Number 6 is a representation. It's 2022-035571. This is one that the board wanted to have Alton review again to see if there was any additional information to be disclosed. Basically, there was no other information to disclose, and The new recommendation is the same, is to authorize a civil penalty of $750 for practicing on expired license and pass the laws and rules exam, and further instruct respondent to file a firm disclosure within 30 days.
I think the concern last time was the number of submittals that were made and the quality of the initial drawing that was submitted. I will say that we do reviews for a number of our clients, submittals that are made for subdivisions and developments. There are many times, almost every time, that a submittal does not pass on the first submittal. In fact, in a couple of cases, we're on our fourth and fifth submittals. I think this recommendation rises to the measure of, I guess, penalty that we should impose.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to accept the recommendation. Can we get a second? Second, any additional discussion?
Go ahead and just be sure to make sure that mic is on when so we can hear you, because they have to record it. Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Speaking too far away.
No, you were fine. I just wanted to capture our motions. But yeah, we've got the motions. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and yes.
A quick question. So this was a shop drawing submittal? No. Oh, sim. This is sim. Okay.
It was a planned submittal for a grading plan and hydraulic calculations for a site.
Because, and that's one of the things that we sometimes get a little, shop drawing submittals don't really have to have an engineering, because you don't put a stamp on those. You typically just put a shop drawing.
An approved, disapproved, revise and resubmit.
Yes, yeah. So I just want to make sure we weren't, okay, no worries. Thank you.
Good. All right. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you.
We're ready for the disciplinary history policy. If you have that in front of you, we were going to add a line. If you recall, we had some debate about it, and then at our last meeting, and the board then decided that we'll just memorialize that in a red line. So that's what you have before you now.
I did have one question. I knew that we had various letters, like letters of instruction, letter of warning, letter of caution. I wasn't familiar with letter of reprimand or admonishment. Are those also?
Those are not ours. Those are like from other jurisdictions. Like we'll get a letter of reprimand, which is kind of like our letter of caution. And so when they see that, if customer service sees that, that'll trigger our letter of caution.
Okay.
But I was wanting to put that in there just to make sure that if they see that from another state, what that is, because they may have a question about it.
Thank you for that explanation.
And as you can see, it's, there was nothing red line per se. This is a red line, but it's just added clarification. Instead of footnoting, we just figured we'd memorialize what was decided upon last meeting into the policy there. That way, our customer service folks will have clear instructions.
And if you'll remember that sometimes we'll get what they see is if a letter of caution or something comes from another state against an individual here that's registered, it could be 15, 20 years ago, and they'll still send it for the board review when that really should just send another letter of caution because it's not up that level of suspension, revocation, or anything like that. So we just want to clarify and give some type of timeline that if it's within 5 years, maybe the board needs to review to see what's going on. But anything over 5 years, it should automatically just be a letter of caution.
Yeah, we discussed this at the last board meeting. I think 5 years is a reasonable time.
Well, that's what we keep on our history.
Yeah.
Say the same thing, that I think this is consistent with what we, requested that would be added. So if there's no other further dialogue, do we need to make a motion to accept it? I make a motion to, should I just say accept the addition? Okay.
Do we have a motion for acceptance?
Second.
Have a second? Any additional conversation or comments? All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, that 5-year thing was.
We're ready then for the agreed citation schedule. Now, I say schedule. It's not much of a schedule because it's got one item on it, but I use the word scheduled deliberately because, right now we're just including continuing education, but this opportunity to be thinking about other places where we can expedite those cases that frequently come before you. If it's a pretty straightforward like CE, somebody didn't have their CE, then in this case, we're keeping consistent with a couple other programs, auctioneers, and also court reporters. If they get popped on a CE audit and they can't produce the CE, then that's a $100 fine. And the $100 fine isn't necessarily hefty, but it's really the discipline that's the issue, because that's on their record. And so that's really what people seem to chafe under more than anything else is the fact that it's on their record. But we can eventually, if there's other things that you see frequently on the report. Now our reports, like today, six items. But if those reports you start seeing the same thing sort of trickling through, if there's a way we could you catch somebody speeding on the side of the highway and just issue them the citation, they sign, they're not in court, then that's an efficient way of doing business, and it also maintains a consistency as well because they're getting the same fee assessed every single time, regardless of regardless of where they're coming from as well. So just be thinking about those things from an administrative efficiency standpoint. But right now, our first item is the CE audit. That's pretty, that's sort of the low bar right now.
Ordinarily, if we have something like this, we also it's a violation, and we also include take and pass the laws and rules exam. In addition to the $100, I agree. I know we're trying to fast track things and eliminate as much processing as we can, and I think this is an efficient way to do that. But should we consider adding the take and pass the laws and rules exam to this, since we do it with everything else?
I don't know that we've historically done that with CE audit. Stuart obviously can clarify. I know with a lot of the other items we do, because those are more like industry related items, whereas this one's more of a procedural, sort of administrative. It's not specific necessarily to the industry itself. Like, for example, the two that I just quoted, auctioneers and court reporters, they wouldn't have to, pass and retest. They get the fine, they get the disciplinary action, and of course they have to remediate, but that's, so that they still have they still have some ground to climb.
It's still and I apologize. And the reason I'm not doing this, and Robert is following protocol. The last two times I did it, it fell over, and trying not to embarrass myself again. But again, it's failure to achieve the required PDH is a violation, and could be subject to some sort of disciplinary action. And every time we take a disciplinary action, we normally require the take and pass the laws and rules exam. That was my point to
that. I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell.
No,
No.
You got the floor.
No, you are the man.
And I kind of want to piggyback a little bit on what Alton said, because technically what they've done is they've lied on their application, right? I mean, when your application comes in, you check off that box that says I have completed my PDHs for this year, and then you sign your name to it. And so while we can argue or discuss or whatever you want to say the merit of PDHs, which I think it's been way watered down from what the original intent was, and I think sometimes our default is to say, well, it's not that important or it's not that something. You've basically got somebody that didn't take 5 minutes to go through their PDHs to check to see if they were up to date before they signed their application. Now, what else are they not doing the same thing on? throughout. I mean, you have to ask that question in the back of your mind. And so, while I perfectly well understand that some of this is just an oversight, you know, I forgot or I did this, and we have those from time to time, and I do get that. And I found myself a couple times getting ready to do my application or reapply and go, oh, I better go back, you know, and just sign it and go on. I thought I need to go back and check those, and I've made myself do that because I understand there's a consequence to signing something that you've checked off and said I've done that. So I would think a minimum of the law and rules, because that is in the law and rules, that you're supposed to review that and go and not sign anything. So I tend to agree with Alton, and I understand there may be an administrative hurdle to kind of overcome with that, but you know, you did sign something incorrectly, and that's my opinion.
I was just going to say that, I mean, if you want us to just put that in there to take and pass a laws and rules exam, I don't think that's a problem. I mean, we can just add that into the citation, and that'll be a part of it. And then you'll want to pass it as amended, like if, you know, what you have in front of you. You just make a motion to amend it and then pass it as amended, and then we can add that in and get that started.
Yeah, if I had the ability to make a motion, I would do that.
I know, but
no, and I would make that motion that we amend that to put that in, because again, we all understand, and the laws and rules is an open book, and it's all that stuff, but there is an aggravation factor almost to that reminds you the next time, you know, I had to go take that stupid law and rules exam, and I had to take, and you kind of, you know, sometimes we learn our best things through a little bit of stretching. So I just think that I think it's got some value to it, and I would make a motion that we approve as written with an amendment that they take and pass the law and rules exam, placed in here at the appropriate location in the document.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to amend the citation language. Any other comments, questions? I do just have a question. What's the time frame we allow them to complete their continuing education after this? I don't think it's on here. It's just a question.
I think it says 30 days.
Well, that's if they to accept the
it.
citation,
Okay.
but to complete their
That is a good
CEUs
question. That is it.
to meet the criteria.
Procedurally, but I don't know if it's like 60 or 90 days, or it's somewhere in that range.
Okay, so that gives them plenty of time to take their
Well,
law
particularly
rules.
now that so many things are available online.
Yeah, and then they can submit everything at the same time and be done with it, and it's their responsibility. So I like the friendly amendment to the motion. So we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead. Sorry.
This applies to interior designers as well. Good. Good.
Across the board. All right. Motion second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we're ready for new business then. Do we have any new business?
I would like for our new members to please have learn the secret handshakes, sing the A&E board song. What other hazing things do we have that we
Just
can
the
have
song.
them do?
I think the song is the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't learn it during orientation, then you need to
You have to take the laws and rules.
And pass.
And pass.
Can we
That's what
can
this
we
is,
at
a
least
stage.
can we at least get them to introduce themselves to everybody here and the general public? Who's
Yeah.
I'm sure there's thousands watching this
Yeah.
broadcast.
Well, we'll start with Mr. Nally then. You'll have Red. We'll have to be on. You just press speak there, and then there you go.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff Nally. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, actually in Ooltewah. I'm a project manager in the technology space.
I'm James Collins from Memphis. I recently retired from Kimley Horn and Associates Consulting Engineers.
We have plenty of time.
I wish. It doesn't seem like it disappears quickly.
Imagine that.
Yeah, ask Rob about that.
Absolutely.
All right. Great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. I don't, unless there's any new business, do we have any? No? Okay.
I don't think of anything.
Chair?
Not having any additional business or new business or whatever, I would like to close this meeting, to adjourn our esteemed board meeting.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. Appreciate that. We are adjourned.